The golden cage Victoria Sterling's life had become a masterpiece of routine and silence. Every morning at 5:30, she woke to the sound of her own breathing in the vast, empty bedroom. The marble floors were cold beneath her feet as she padded to the ensuite bathroom, careful to keep her movements quiet. By 6 a.m., she was in the kitchen, preparing breakfast for a husband who treated her like an expensive piece of furniture necessary for appearances, requiring no real attention. Adrian Blackwood descended the marble staircase at exactly 6:15 every morning. His tailored suits were immaculate, his dark hair styled to perfection, and his steel-gray eyes focused on everything except his wife. 3 years of marriage, and Victoria could count their meaningful conversations on one hand. She set his coffee cup down just as his polished shoes clicked against the kitchen floor. Black coffee, no sugar, no cream. She had learned his preferences through careful observation, not conversation. He took the cup without acknowledgement, scrolled through his phone, and left for Blackwood Industries without a single word. Victoria remained at the kitchen island, eating her toast in silence, wondering how her life had become this beautiful, suffocating cage. The memories of how she ended up here still stung like fresh wounds. 3 years ago, she had been Victoria Sterling, a bright business graduate with dreams of changing the world. Then her father's construction company collapsed under the weight of bad investments and corrupt partnerships. The debt was staggering, enough to destroy 3 generations of her family's modest wealth. Her mother, Diana Sterling, had made the arrangement with tears in her eyes and desperation in her voice. The Blackwood family needed their heir married to someone respectable, quiet, and manageable. Victoria's family needed salvation from financial ruin. It was business, pure and simple. Adrian had been coldly professional during their first meeting, explaining the terms like a merger agreement. She would be his wife in name, attend necessary social functions, and maintain the appearance of a stable marriage. In return, her family's debts would disappear, and she would want for nothing material. What she hadn't expected was how thoroughly he would ignore her existence. Victoria finished her breakfast and retreated to the gardener's sanctuary in this loveless mansion. She tended to roses that bloomed more beautifully than her marriage, finding solace in nurturing something that actually responded to her care. The vibration of her phone interrupted her thoughts. Adrian's name appeared on the screen unusual, since he never called during business hours. "Hello," she answered, her voice careful and neutral. "Victoria." His deep voice carried its usual. "Chill. I need you to attend an event with me tonight." She blinked, startled. In 3 years, she had never appeared publicly as his wife. What kind of event? Business gala? International investors? 7 o'clock? His tone suggested this was a command, not a request. Why now? The question escaped before she could stop it. A pause. "Business reasons? You're my wife. It's time you acted like it." The line went dead, leaving Victoria staring at her phone. In shock, after 3 years of being invisible, why did he suddenly need her visible? The awakening that evening, Victoria stood before her closet feeling utterly lost. She owned beautiful clothes. Adrian's money ensured she lacked nothing material, but she had nowhere to wear them. Finally, she chose a deep emerald dress. That brought out her green eyes, something she had bought in a moment of optimism that had long since faded. At exactly 7, she descended the stairs to find Adrian waiting in the foyer. He looked devastating in his black tuxedo, every inch the powerful billionaire CEO. When he saw her, something flickered across his face, surprise, maybe even appreciation, but it vanished so quickly she thought she'd imagined it. "You look acceptable," he said, offering his arm with mechanical courtesy. "Acceptable?" Victoria swallowed the hurt and placed her hand on his arm, feeling the warmth of his body through the expensive fabric. It was the first time they had touched in months. The Grand Meridian Hotel ballroom glittered with wealth and power. Victoria felt like an actress playing a role she hadn't rehearsed. Adrian's hand rested on the small of her back as he guided her through the crowd, introducing her with practiced efficiency. "My wife, Victoria," he would say, his voice giving nothing away. Most people smiled politely and moved on. But Victoria noticed how the women looked at Adrian with obvious interest, and how the men's eyes lingered on her with appreciation. She began to understand why Adrian had brought her. She was beautiful. Arm candy, proof of his desirability and stability. Then she met James Thompson. He was different from the others. Warm brown eyes, genuine smile, and an easy confidence that didn't seem predatory. When Adrian introduced them, James took her hand and held it a moment longer than necessary. "Mrs. Blackwood," James said, his British accent adding charm to his words. "Adrian's been hiding you away. I can see why if I had a wife this beautiful, I'd want to keep her to myself too." Victoria felt heat rise in her cheeks. When was the last time someone had complimented her so directly? Adrian's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "James is expanding his operations into South America," Adrian explained, his voice carefully neutral. "He's looking for local expertise." "How fascinating," Victoria said, surprised by her own interest. "What kind of business?" "Sustainable development projects," James replied, his eyes lighting up. "Ecotourism, renewable energy. I believe business should benefit communities, not exploit them." As James talked about his work, Victoria found herself genuinely engaged for the first time in years. Here was someone who saw business as more than profit margins and market dominance. "You seem very knowledgeable about international markets," James observed. "Do you work in the field?" Victoria felt Adrian's hand tighten on her back, a warning. "I studied international business, but I don't work," she replied carefully. "What a waste," James said, and Victoria's heart fluttered at the genuine regret in his voice. "Someone with your intelligence should be making a difference in the world." Before Adrian could respond, James was pulled away by another investor, but not before slipping Victoria his business card. "I'd love to continue our conversation sometime," he said with a smile that made her feel truly seen for the first time in 3 years. "Oh, study his profile? Is that a problem? You're my wife." "On paper," she shot back, surprised by her own boldness. Adrian pulled into their driveway and cut the engine. In the sudden silence, Victoria could hear her own heartbeat. He turned to face her, his gray eyes intense in the dim light. "You are my wife, Victoria, every way that matters." "Really?" she challenged. "When did you decide that?" "Because for 3 years I've been nothing more than an expensive decoration in your perfect life." Something shifted in Adrian's expression, a crack in his icy composure. For a moment, Victoria thought she saw something vulnerable beneath the surface, but then his mask slipped back into place. "Things change," he said simply. Victoria laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Yes, they do. What? But sometimes it's too late." She got out of the car and walked into the house, leaving Adrian sitting alone in the darkness, finally forced to confront what his neglect might cost him. That night, Victoria lay in her separate bedroom, James's business card on her nightstand. For the first time in 3 years, she felt like a woman worth wanting, and the feeling was both terrifying and intoxicating. Down the hall, Adrian paced his study, replaying every moment of the evening. The way James had looked at Victoria, the way she had smiled in response, the way she had challenged him in the car, it all pointed to one terrible truth. He was losing her, and he hadn't even realized she was his to lose. Victoria woke to the sound of movement in the kitchen below. Strange, Adrian always left before she stirred. Curiosity drew her downstairs, where she found a sight that stopped her cold. Adrian stood at the stove, still in his silk pajama pants and white t-shirt, flipping pancakes with surprising skill. The kitchen island was set for 2, complete with fresh orange juice and coffee that smelled like heaven. "Good morning," he said without turning around, his voice softer than she'd heard in years. Victoria remained frozen in the doorway, wearing nothing but her silk nightgown in confusion. "What's happening?" "Breakfast." He turned, and she caught her breath. Without his armor of expensive suits, Adrian looked younger, more human. His dark hair was tousled, and there was something vulnerable in his gray eyes. "I thought we should eat together." "Why?" The question escaped before she could stop it. Adrian set down the spatula and faced her fully. Because I've been an ass for 3 years and I'm tired of pretending you don't exist. Victoria's heart hammered against her ribs. What changed? Last night, watching Thompson look at you like Adrian's jaw clenched? Like you were something precious. Something worth treasuring. It's made me realize I've been blind. The choice, Victoria moved cautiously to the island, accepting the plate he offered. The pancakes were perfect, golden and fluffy. When had he learned to cook? This doesn't erase 3 years of indifference, she said quietly. I know, Adrian. Sat across from her, his eyes never leaving her face. But I'm hoping it's a start. They ate in charged silence. Victoria was acutely aware of how the morning light caught the silver threads in Adrian's dark hair, how his strong hands moved. As he cut his food, how his eyes kept drifting to her mouth when she spoke. I called Thompson this morning, Adrian said suddenly. Victoria's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Why? To decline his proposal for partnership. Adrian's voice was carefully controlled. I told him Blackwood Industries wasn't interested in his projects. That's not your decision to make for me, Victoria said, anger flaring. You're right. Adrian set down his fork. That's why I'm offering you something better. Better how? Work with me. At Blackwood Industries. Someone with your expertise for our Latin American expansion. Victoria stared at him. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a partnership. Professional, and Adrian hesitated. If you'll have it. Before Victoria could respond, her phone buzzed. James Thompson's name appeared on the screen. Adrian's eyes darkened as she answered. Victoria, darling. James's warm voice filled the space between them. I hope you slept well. I've been thinking about our conversation last night. James, hello. Victoria was hyper-aware of Adrian, watching her every move. I have a proposition for you. I'm starting a new project in Costa Rica sustainable resorts that actually benefit local communities. I need someone with your background to head up the Latin American division. The position comes with complete autonomy, competitive salary, and the chance to make a real difference. Victoria's breath caught. It was everything she'd ever wanted: meaningful work, independence, respect. I'd need to think about it, she managed. Of course. But Victoria? Don't let anyone make you believe you're not capable of extraordinary things. You are. The line went dead. Adrian's face had gone completely still. He offered you a job, Adrian said, his voice flat. He offered me what you never did: a chance to be valued for who I am, not what I represent. Adrian stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. And what about us? What about us? Victoria's voice cracked. There's no us, Adrian. There never was. It's just you living your life and me existing in the margins of it. That's not true, isn't it? When's the last time you asked me how I felt, what I wanted, what I dreamed about? Tears spilled down her cheeks. Don't even know me. I know you love gardening because it's the only place you smile, Adrian said desperately. I know you hum Mozart when you cook. I know you read romance novels and hide them under your pillow. I know you cry sometimes in the shower because I can hear you through the walls. Victoria stared at him, shocked. I know you're brilliant and beautiful and wasted on someone like me, he continued, his voice breaking. I know I don't deserve you, but I'm asking you to give me a chance to try. Don't leave me, Victoria, please. You want me to stay? She whispered. I want you to choose me. Not because of our arrangement, not because of duty, but because you want to, because maybe we could build something real. Victoria looked at the man she'd been married to for 3 years, seeing him clearly for the first time. Behind the cold exterior was fear, loneliness, and something that might have been love. If I stay, she said slowly, things have to change. Really change anything? I want to work. Not for you, with you, as an equal partner. Done. I want my own space in this house. A real office, not just a pretty room. Done. And I want you to talk to me, really talk to me, about everything. Adrian nodded, hope flickering in his eyes. What else? Victoria took a shaky breath. I want you to court me, like we're starting over. Like we chose each other. I did choose you, Adrian said softly. I just forgot to tell you. Asterisk the new. Beginning 6 months later, Victoria stood in her new office at Blackwood Industries, reviewing proposals for their Costa Rica project. Yes, She had ultimately chosen to work with Adrian rather than James, but on her own terms. The transformation hadn't been instant or easy. There had been arguments, tears, and moments when Victoria wondered if she'd made the right choice. Slowly, painstakingly, they had built something neither of them expected: a real marriage. Adrian knocked on her open door, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Mrs. Blackwood Sterling," he said with a smile, using the hyphenated name she'd insisted on keeping. "It's the most brilliant woman in Latin American development today." "Flattery will get you everywhere, Mr. Blackwood," she replied. Accepting the coffee and noting he'd remembered exactly how she liked it: 2 sugars, extra cream. "I certainly hope so." He perched on the edge of her desk, something that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. "Because I have something to ask you." Victoria raised an eyebrow. Adrian reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Victoria's breath caught. "3 years ago I gave you a ring that represented duty and obligation," he said, his voice tender. "I'd like to give you one that represents choice and love." He opened the box to reveal a stunning emerald surrounded by diamonds, the same color as the dress she'd worn that fateful night. "Victoria Sterling Blackwood," he said, dropping to one knee beside her chair. "Will you marry me? For real this time?" Tears blurred her vision as she looked down at this man who had learned to see her, to value her, to love her. "Well, yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you again." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Victoria marveled at how different this moment felt from their first wedding. That had been about survival. This was about choice. "There's one more thing," Adrian said, pulling her to her feet. "James called. He wants to partner with us on the Costa Rica project. Apparently, he's impressed with our proposal." Victoria laughed. "And you're okay with that?" "I'm okay with anything that makes you happy," Adrian said, cupping her face in his hands. "Besides, I'm not worried about James Thompson anymore. No, because you chose me, and every day you keep choosing me." As Adrian kissed her, Victoria thought about the journey that had brought them here, from strangers bound by obligation. 2 partners bound by love. They had learned that sometimes the most beautiful flowers bloom in the most unexpected soil. Their first marriage had been arranged. This one was chosen. And that made all the difference. A year later, Victoria and Adrian stood together in Costa Rica, watching the groundbreaking ceremony for their first sustainable resort. James Thompson was there too now, a trusted business partner and friend who had played an unexpected role in bringing them together. "Any regrets?" Adrian asked, slipping his arm around his wife's waist. Victoria looked at the community members who would benefit from their project, at the pristine rainforest they were committed to protecting, and finally at her husband, the man who had learned to love her exactly as she was. "None," she said, leaning into his embrace. "Not a single one." As the sun set over the Costa Rican jungle, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Victoria realized that sometimes the most beautiful love stories are the ones that almost never happen. Sometimes you have to lose someone to truly find them. Sometimes, if you're very lucky, you get a second chance at a first love. And